there's actually a lot of beauty within blackness, and then being a black male, like there's so much to be explored and to be celebrated and to be prideful of. So it means the world to me, really. Like, I'm so happy that I'm black. My name's Echo Stone. I'm an artist, student, um, biracial. It was really interesting growing up in Victoria. Like, I'm not sure if I was necessarily conscious of it. You know, you're just sort of born into the world you are, and that seems to be normal. As I got into like middle school and stuff like that, it began to really irk me that I couldn't be around or see anybody who I identified with. There was a lot of kind of othering, not intentionally, but just kind of, the hair and my features started to become a point of interest. The Carefree Black Boy Project is a very young initiative, basically to deconstruct and then construct a more holistic notion of black masculinity. That's basically what it is, yeah. How I got involved was basically through Yega explaining to me about his life story and about this idea of the Carefree Black Boy Project, and me basically just being so about it from the minute like he explained it to me, because it just seemed so important and truthful to my experience.
When I saw Echo or just like talking to him and conversing with him, I don't know, he really inspired me in a lot of ways. It was so when I saw him, like I knew exactly what I wanted for the Carefree Black Boy project, like exactly what I want the project to achieve. Like he seemed to be the aim. Like if I could put all the concepts and what we want to achieve in a single person, Echo embodies that. He was so nuanced. He was so free with himself, and I don't know, just so inspiring in just being himself in the way that he connects with people and the ways that he connects with the world. It was just something that was so pure.
When you're a child, there's this kind of, your experience is very free and it's very unhindered by people's ideas of what's proper attitude and what you should do. And I think everybody experiences this to a certain degree. In Victoria, people would literally stare at you, and like you'd be walking down the street and somebody would say, "Oh, black person," they'd like look again. Whereas here, obviously, that doesn't happen with white folk or any kind of folk, just because it's very mixed, right? And so I think the first thing I noticed was like that ability to become invisible almost, kind of building into that idea of visible minority. Like in Toronto, of course, you're still a visible minority when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, but there's a little bit, there's a sort of a soft impression of like, oh, actually I can just kind of disappear into the all. Being raised just by my mother was totally fulfilling, and of course my dad played a part in my life, but not as significant. Like he wasn't around as much. My dad, and what I am very appreciative for, is that he did provide a cultural foundation for me, so I wasn't too suspended and lost. Like I think a lot of people, again, when you're in a homogeneous like white community, their notions of or their ideas about blackness come from pop culture and stuff like that, mostly American, and that was projected upon me a lot. But I knew that was not me because of being half Ghanaian, and him definitely providing that for me. I think that's what biracial people have to struggle with. Like they don't have like a proper terminology to describe their ethnic background, because they are the first of their often of their like of their type. Akan is the people, like it's a region like mostly Ghana, current Ghana now, like southern regions of Ghana, a little bit of in Cote d'Ivoire, and there's different tribes within that ethnic group, and they have cultural similarities, but they're also distinct. Um, I like to identify with the ethnic group rather than the nationality, just because it gives little bit more of a grounding to me, and it seems a little bit more authentic. And then a Saxon is the same way, rather than saying Canadian or um, English or whatever. Saxon is like basically like a mixture of the Nordic people thousands of years ago who came in, and there's a lot of invasions and stuff like that of what is now the United Kingdom, and intermixing of those people. That's why I say Saxon, just because it kind of brings all that together. And so yeah, just a Saxon is something that I kind of have had to develop on my own, because when people have asked me, it's always been like I have no idea. Like I guess I could just say half black, half white, but when people ask for detail in terms of your background, it would be very easy to reference Ghana. Um, but then when on my white side, became a little bit more abstract. So. All right, so we're here at Daniel Spectrum in Regent Park, where Center for Social Innovation is held, and that's where the Carefree Black Boy Project is headquartered, and we're going to be interviewing some black boys. In the Center for Social Innovation, CSI, it's just basically a space where different nonprofits and startups can come and use different resources and stuff like that they have here. So that's why we have like this big room to do interviews and stuff like that.
Basically what we're trying to do is reach out to black males across multiple communities and get them together and start a conversation about change in our community.
All of our interviewees so far, which is has been amazing, that they all sort of they sort of drop everything in front of us, and they're really connected with us.
A carefree black boy to me is someone who's just someone who doesn't have to think about the fact that they're a carefree black boy. Yeah.
I think being raised by a single mother, and there's like this fiction that goes on, like this myth that goes on, just like, oh, if he had a man in his life, he wouldn't be like this, or he wouldn't be so femme or whatever, and that's just absolutely not true. When you're with queer people of color, like there's some things that go without saying, and that's what I think what's a huge thing about white spaces versus black space is that like there's so many things that I don't have to explain, you know what I mean, about my experience that's already just understood, right? And so in the same sense where it was like when somebody asks me about, my sexual identity or something like that, I can just say queer and then they'll be like, oh, okay, like you just kind of like that. I felt a tremendous amount of pressure to be sexual in middle school, which I wasn't ready for. I realize now in retrospect, I just wasn't ready for. So I came out of the closet actually in middle school. There was a sense of security, weirdly enough, within like the homosexual label. And I've been privileged enough to be in a lot of queer, positive spaces, accepting spaces throughout my education. But then into grade 11, I was like, I had started to tell my friends personally and stuff like that I'm also bisexual. And that plays into the biphobia. There was a fear of saying that I was both, the way that I was being, and this, it plays into masculinity too, the way that I was being like so affectionate with women in my life, they would see it as being like mendacious and like problematic or conniving, like, oh, like he was actually like into women and he was, like, feeling me up, which I wasn't. I wasn't feeling up anybody, but it was just like all this fear that probably comes from something, right? But then that kind of, I think, the part of the reason I felt like that too is because the space for masculinity in terms of emotional intelligence and being connected and being affectionate with anybody that doesn't have to have this like hypersexualized connotation is almost impossible and like non-existent. Labels and categories give me a lot of anxiety in terms of who I'm supposed to be and who I am. And so I like queer because it's a umbrella term that I can feel comfortable in, with like I have with my femme nature and the way I dress, and then also being attracted to women but also being attracted to men. But I haven't been with a man, but I've been with a woman. So it's just like a matter of like getting older and being with different people and seeing how that plays out. Yeah, I feel like that's so much what I experienced through my life, is that kind of when I would step out of the sort of norm of the archetype of the black male, it would be repressed by others because it's hard for them to, they have like an imagined notion of what I should be, and then when I would move out of that place, it would, I don't know, they wouldn't be able to process it properly, I don't know. Decolonization is just seeking to kind of remove all of those ideas and preconceived notions, and I feel like the best way to do that is through education. The library is important to me because it's a site of education, and it's just you and the knowledge instead of some other person mediating and editing maybe what you really want to know, and it's a place where you can just go and learn without really any restrictions. One of the books I really connected with here, They Came Before Columbus, and it just speaks of the story of the African presence in ancient America. In this book, it really helped me feel a sense of pride about being black. I mean, I feel like so much of our history has been erased and degraded, and that really impacts, I feel, how black folks feel about their humanity right now, in terms of like, oh, what have we contributed to the human story? And when you look at Western history, it's mostly just like, white men doing great stuff. And so to read this book and to hear about all these ancient civilizations that I had no idea existed made me feel, just a deep sense of pride and appreciation from my roots, I guess. Yeah. Kind of coffee is a safe space for me because, one, I like coffee, and two, I love these two people who run it, Mitchie and Eugene. They're really nice. They care so much about the service that they give and the product rather than just trying to make profit, and I just can feel that when I'm in this space. And so, I love it here. It's chill. There's no pretension. That's why I like coming here a lot. I think it's so difficult to be true to yourself when there's so many people saying so many things about how you should be, and you turn on the television, there's so many images of you being a certain way. You have to like move away from like these narratives about black masculinity have been around since first contact, and they just have to go around this brutish, aggressive, monstrous, rapist sort of, like, it's really that. Like, I was watching a documentary called 13, which is on Netflix, very recent, and it's basically all stuff I knew, but it was basically about how when slavery was abolished with the 13th Amendment, there was a little clause would say, oh, you're allowed to be enslaved if you're a criminal. And now the whole criminal system since then has been built to criminalize black life and get black men, again, in slavery. And it fits into this kind of narrative of just we need to tame these beasts and they have to be subjugated and blah, 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 blah. And it gets to the point where you can be, a black kid with a hoodie getting some candy and you can be shot, you know what I mean, by some, like, mall cop or some shit. Like, I don't know who Zimmerman was. He wasn't even actually a real cop. But because of those myths that are so deeply built into white society about blackness, but specifically black men. And so the Carefree Black Boy Project seeks to do this for black men to kind of just dismantle all that and just be like, no, that's not who you are. You can be who you truly want to be. We really need people to question their preconceived notions. You know what I mean? Like, how do you feel when a group of black teenagers, boys, move into the subway or move into a space? Like, how do you feel? Do you feel that racialized fear? And a lot of people do, you know what I mean? And just to get rid of that now.